The world reels in shock from the news of a submersible vessel carrying 5 people, which has vanished near the site of the Titanic wreckage. After days of searching for the sub, we receive heartbreaking news. Everyone hoped that the 5 people would be within the submersible, perhaps out of oxygen, but still intact. The reality turned out differently. Keep watching until the end of this video to learn what truly transpired with the OceanGate Submersible. So, what happened? The remnants of the imploded submersible have been sighted for the first time after those on board reportedly perished on their journey to the Titanic wreck site. Communication between the Titan and the Canadian research ship, the Polar Prince, ceased 2 hours post-descent. At the time of its disappearance, it was reported that there was a 96-hour supply of emergency oxygen for the craft, but the time had run out. It was then reported that debris, believed to be from the missing sub, was discovered near the area. 5 people, including multi-millionaire Stockton Rush, who aspired to be the first man on Mars and was also the CEO of OceanGate Expedition, were on board the Titan. The Titan, unlike a submarine, was expressly built by Rush's company to enable tourists to visit the Titanic wreckage. It can't submerge and return to port on its own. Submersibles are known to have limited power reserves and require a support vessel above for launch and recovery. GPS is not an option for this type of craft. Instead, it uses a special text messaging system for communication and instructions. The pilot operates the Titan via a modified video game controller. Stockton Rush stated last year that piloting the sub shouldn't require much skill. In a haunting final text, one of the passengers, British billionaire Hamish Harding, disclosed that the weather had been unfavorable for sea travel in the days leading up to the trip. "Hey, we're headed out tomorrow. It looks good. The weather's been bad, so they've been waiting for this," he messaged his friend, retired NASA astronaut Colonel Terry Virts. Virts knew his friend understood the risks, even though they didn't discuss them much. "He understood the risks for sure. There's no doubt about that," he said in an interview with ITV's Good Morning. The U.S. Coast Guard reportedly found human remains among the sub debris. The debris they've collected contained presumed human remains. Evidence is still being examined by the Marine Board of Investigation. Investigators from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board and the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, the French Marine Casualties Investigation Board, and the UK Marine Accident Investigation Branch are also closely involved in the investigation. The hunt. During the search for the Titan, a sonar reportedly detected banging noises from the area where it should be underwater. A Canadian P-3 aircraft identified these underwater sounds on Tuesday, June 20th. Other search teams also mentioned hearing additional sounds at 30-minute intervals, indicating a possible hope of survivors. Hence, the search continued for several more days. Chris Brown, an explorer and friend of one of the missing crew members, said that continuous noise wouldn't be noticed, but noise at 30-minute intervals suggests human activity. "I'm sure they're all saving oxygen and energy because it's cold and dark down there," he added. However, the U.S. Coast Guard couldn't determine the source of these sounds. Consequently, experts have proposed various theories. Carl Hartsfield, a specialist from the Woodhull Oceanographic Institution, told a news outlet, "The ocean is a complex place. Obviously, there are human sounds, nature sounds, and it's tough to tell what the sources of those noises are sometimes." Jeff Carson, a professor emeritus from Accused University, suggested that the noise heard might be a complex echo from sounds bouncing off the Titanic debris field. He also said that these sounds might be ricocheting off multiple things, which could confuse the location. Now, an underwater robot is searching the seafloor for debris that the submersible's implosion might have caused, resulting in 5 crew safety concerns. OceanGate Expeditions was frequently warned of potential severe safety issues with the submersible's development. A local deep-sea engineer from California claims that Rush overlooked their initial warnings about the sub's dangerous materials. "We told him, 'Someone is going to be killed in this thing, and you've got to not do it,'" said Liz Taylor, president of Dewar Marine Operations. OceanGate's CEO met with Taylor in 2015 while he was constructing the Titan submersible. "Stockton felt like he was pushing the edge, using new materials," she mentioned. David Lockridge, OceanGate's director of marine operations, wrote a 2018 report stating that the sub needed more testing and that passengers might be at risk at extreme depths, according to a lawsuit filed in Seattle that year. The company sued Lockridge that same year for allegedly violating a non-disclosure agreement, but the case was resolved after several months on undisclosed terms. OceanGate received another warning in 2018 from the Marine Technology Society, echoing Taylor's warnings. They recommended that the company should submit its prototype for testing by an expert third party before launching to ensure passenger safety. However, Rush rejected their suggestions and grumbled about the regulations. There hasn't been an injury in the commercial sub-industry in over 35 years. It's incredibly safe because of all these regulations, but it also hasn't innovated or grown because of all these regulations, he said. He continued using carbon fiber to construct his submersible, which tragically imploded on its last dive. Despite doubts surrounding Rush's decision to continue operating the Titan, David Prague, a CBS reporter who rode on the OceanGate Submersible in 2022, thinks Rush was not a swindler but was genuinely passionate about his project. "I don't think Rush is a con man. He genuinely believed in his design enough to trust it with his own life many times over," he said. Recently, Las Vegas billionaire real estate developer Jay Bloom disclosed that Rush offered him and his sons seats in the doomed Titan sub. He refused the offer due to scheduling conflicts and safety concerns. "The last time I saw Stockton in person was on March 1st. We discussed the dive and safety concerns during lunch at the Luxor food court after a tour of the Titanic exhibit at Luxor. He was absolutely convinced that safer than crossing the street. He gave me a photo book signed by him and Paul Enriquelé, 2 of the 5 people on board the sub," he revealed. Legal insight. Legal experts suggest that OceanGate could possibly sidestep legal responsibility by leveraging a law employed by the owners of the Titanic over 100 years ago. This legislation, which is 172 years old, could turn the tables for the company. It's known as the Limitation of Liability Act of 1851. This is an intriguing situation because it happened in international waters. There are many intricate issues related to the choice of law and jurisdiction, as well as where any disputes may occur or what government authorities or companies may conduct investigations, said Michael Horowski, a maritime law professor at Tulane University. If evidence emerges that OceanGate was aware of a design flaw or risk and proceeded anyway, this might stop them from limiting their liability, even if it wasn't exempt under the Small Vessel Liability Act, he noted. Horowski added that all passengers on the exploration were clearly alerted to potential risks. Crew members from previous expeditions who boarded the ill-fated submersible Titan reported signing comprehensive waivers accepting the possibility of injury or death. Mike Reese, who boarded the Titan last year, said, "You sign a huge waiver that lists various ways you could die on the trip. The waiver you sign before boarding mentions death 3 times. Yet, despite this, the victims' families are expected to seek damages against the company, as Professor Tom Schoenbaum from the University of Washington mentioned. A lot of OceanGate's liability might depend on the waiver's content signed by the participants. For instance, if you're on a cruise ship, the ship cannot make you sign any liability waiver, but on an experimental trip like this Titan one, those people knew what they were getting into, and I believe these liability waivers would be upheld in U.S. courts," he said. "Do you believe the investigation will uncover something more shocking? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below."